will give you more detail about that if required. The long-term plan submission is coming up, and we have a number of major exciting initiatives there. The first one is the Central Business District Recreation and Leisure Hub based at Memorial Park. This includes an indoor basketball court, indoor aquatics facility, and some other options around outdoor aquatics. A huge amount of work has gone into that in conjunction with Council, and we are working hard to finalise the feasibility study, which will go to our board on Monday, and hopefully that will be a key part of the future of Tauranga. We're also planning to submit a plan for an event centre at Trustpower Bay Park and a number of other projects. So these things take a long time to come to fruition, but we're well down the path and putting a huge amount of work this year into making sure that we can provide quality submissions to you so that you can make better informed decisions. The digital transformation strategy is where we are looking at our legacy information technology systems. They don't talk to each other, they're well out of date, and they're not helping us with improving our levels of customer satisfaction and our ability to make good business decisions. The board have approved and supported the strategy that Justine is driving. This is really a critical part of what we need to do to set ourselves up even better for the future, and we'll continue to work hard on that this year. And the last one is strategic alignment with TCC. The reason I put that there is that we are joined at the hip with TCC. We are part of this organisation, and it's really important that we understand where TCC are going, where Tauranga City Council want us to go, and how we're going to work together on that so that we can maximise all the opportunities that are there, particularly with the challenges we have around growth, and particularly with some of the exciting things that can happen with the city. I'm happy to take any questions. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Gary. Thank you very much for that tremendous overview. I think just before I ask for questions, your last point is really pertinent, that we are all one team. We are all part of the same team, and we should be, I think we should think of ourselves in that way. And while there will always be contestable issues around funding and growth particularly, I think it's important that we do recognise that we're all in the same boat here. So can I just congratulate both you and Mike on a great year, and interesting to hear the growth around basketball particularly. And before I ask questions, the strategy around your growth to fit in with the growth of the city is going to be very important. So we're hand in glove in that, and I'm really pleased to hear about the significant strategy work that you put into the aquatic centres particularly. I know that you will just, as we all do, we get pressure around 50-metre pools, and so for example we can have the World Surf Lifesaving Championships and what have you, and things to think about in that regard, as well as all the other issues you're talking about. I think it's just fantastic, and if we can continue to create a destination out of Tauranga, I know Kristen's going to come to that later on, then, and the Bay of Plenty, then that's just tremendous. So thank you. Questions from anyone?
Thank you, Mayor Timmy. G'day, Gary. Thank you for coming in today, and thank you, Mr. Chair, as well. Gary, question around badminton and Bay Park. Council was discussing with badminton citing a new badminton courts, potentially in Soper Reserve, potentially elsewhere on Newton Street. What conversations have you had with badminton in Tauranga, and is there the potential to locate a facility somewhere out at Bay Park?
Thanks for that, Steve. We've had some initial conversations with them some time ago, and they were talking about a concept of quite a significant building with special functionality for badminton. So we're not talking about a multi-purpose indoor sports centre. As following on from that conversation, we've had discussions with council staff regarding Bay Park. That's triggered us to complete a master plan for Bay Park, and as part of that master plan we have identified an area adjacent to the current Trustpower Arena 6 court where we think a facility, an indoor sports facility could go at some stage in the future. Now, whether that is one for badminton or whether it's one that is for basketball and volleyball or whatever, that's really a matter to be decided. But we have allocated a space for an indoor sports. Now, it'll be up to, I guess, us working with council to identify what is the priority use for that piece of land. I think what the badminton are asking for, it's a very, very expensive facility. It's going to take a lot of money to build it. And my limited sort of knowledge of it is that, I think it's going to be very difficult for the numbers to stack up in terms of utilisation and return back to the facility, back to the city. So it's quite a specialised facility. My understanding is they're looking for.
Thank you. Councillor Robson.
Thank you. Through the chair, Gary, you highlighted the contribution made by ratepayers to, if you like, operational funding, but there's other costs that ratepayers pay as well. Could you give an indication, obviously this is a live stream, so people don't have access to the reports and things in front of them, could you give an indication of what the total, if you like, input by ratepayers is to BVL and how that's been over the past 5 or 6 years of BVL's existence? So depreciation funding and contribution to renewals, and what's the total amount?
I don't have the total amount. I can find it right now if you want. But you're correct that council do contribute more than just the operating grant. Council transferred the assets that belong to council over to us, and as part of that, there is depreciation funding that council do provide. They do provide also a renewals grant, which is quite significant. So that helps us obviously maintain and keep the buildings going. And also there is, I think, some loan funding where we've had to borrow money, and there is some funding there. Having said that, there are other facilities that we are expected to contribute towards depreciation and also renewals and so on. So I don't know whether Paul's got that number, but
Chair, we'll have to get back to you in terms of the total number.
but it is significant. It's well into the millions. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Robson. Councillor Cloud.
Thank you. That sort of segues into my question, actually. I was just looking over the last 4 annual reports, and I noticed that the loan balance from TCC to BVL, the amount that you owe TCC, has increased from 9.3 million in 2016 to 14.7 million in 2019. So if the answer can't be given right now, but I'm very keen to get a response either from yourself or from Paul Davidson as to what that actually involves. Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, we can get back to you in terms of the detailed breakdown, but just a high-level comment. It'll be made up of what's been approved through long-term plans and additional debt funding that's associated with projects will be components of it, but we can provide that list of what's made that up.
Councillor Hughes.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to understand our big events. So you said that they generate money for the city. Do we own Bay Dreams, those big ones? Which ones do we own, and is the actual event generating money, or is it just or is it the flow-on effects?
Thanks for that. So there's 2 parts to that answer. When Bay Dreams was created, excuse me, 4 or 5 years ago, we were in a 1/3 partnership with 2 promoters. And we've helped over that period of time to develop it, and essentially we took 1/3 of any profit from the event. But we also carried with that a lot of risk, and we're also involved in a lot of operational costs as part of our contribution to the partnership. The board and management made a strategic decision last year that given the growth of Bay Dreams and where the promoters wanted to take it, it was no longer appropriate for us to be a 1/3 partner, and that we would rather be the venue, the provider of the venue. So essentially, the promoters hire the venue from us, so we get revenue from that. We also get a percentage of revenue from the sale of food and beverage. And the way that's gone is that we have pretty much maintained our revenues from those sources. So it's worked out quite well. And one of the benefits in the arrangement we've made with them, we're able to extend the period that Bay Dreams has committed to come to Trustpower Bay Park. Because as you can imagine, when you have a festival of that success, every other city, and I'm talking about Rotorua and New Plymouth, will offer them all sorts of incentives to move the festival there. So we've locked it in for the next few years, and that was part of that change in the arrangement. So I hope that answers your question. And then, of course, you know, for Bay Dreams, when you've got 30,000 young people coming in, they're spending money in supermarkets and the warehouse and so on, and creating jobs. So that's the flow-on effect.
Thank you for those. Can I just reflecting on the two of the questions particularly, I think it is important that we do in a public forum particularly understand the impact of cost and the burden of debt across time. I also think it needs to be balanced with economic value. It's very easy to talk about cost, but I think the economic value that's provided to the city as a consequence of those contributions needs to be factored in and understood as well. And from what I'm seeing from the report, and I've read the detailed report, this is going really well, and I see you're asking for a growth strategy that's combined with the city's growth, and that makes perfect sense to me. So, Paul, when we're looking at the answers to the questions that Councillors Robson and Cloud have asked, and rightly so, I think also we need to really understand the economic value provided by Bay Venues to the city as a destination and all that comes. And I think Gary's last point about, for example, expenditure in retail shops and supermarkets is really very valid. So thank you both very much for your time, and congratulations on a great year. Moving on to BOPLAS, Bay of Plenty Local Authority Shared Services. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to be able to update you on BOPLAS's performance over the last financial year. I'm conscious of the fact that some of the councillors are well aware of BOPLAS and what we do and the value that we deliver to the councils, and some of the new faces around the table may not be so familiar. So I just thought I'd spend the first couple of minutes just providing a little bit of background to BOPLAS and what we do for the council. We're a little bit unique as a CCO in that we're owned by the 9 councils in the Bay of Plenty and in the Gisborne region, and they all have an equal shareholding in BOPLAS. Prior to BOPLAS, there was a history of collaboration happening in the Bay of Plenty, but it was really limited to neighbouring councils doing things together occasionally and sometimes in conjunction with the regional council. And some forward-thinking CEOs identified that there was a real opportunity to formalise that collaboration and extend it so it covered a wide range of services and joint procurement. And the drivers behind establishing BOPLAS are just as relevant today as what they were when BOPLAS was established. Financial imperatives, councils are under constant pressure to deliver more and spend less, and there's an obvious opportunity to be able to do that in conjunction with neighbouring councils to be able to deliver services more effectively and more efficiently. There's also the opportunity to add capacity through multiple councils working on a project simultaneously, as opposed to having to draw that extra resource into individual councils. And councils are knowledge-based organisations, and the opportunity through collaboration is to be able to share a lot of that knowledge. Often councils work in complete isolation, and quite often it's a duplication of effort. So through BOPLAS there's a great opportunity for councils to be sharing knowledge. And of course, the government has strong initiatives around shared services. We're seeing it in health, we're seeing it in education, we're seeing it in their own procurement programs through all of government. So there's a lot of support and pressure from government for councils to be working more closely. So BOPLAS is governed by a board of directors, which is made up of the 9 CEOs of our shareholding councils. We also have an independent director who's currently our chair, Craig O'Connell, and he provides his apologies that he was unable to attend today. Craig's Wellington based. He's also a director on Manawatu Wanganui LAS, so there's some good synergies having a director across both those organisations. We have an operations committee that's responsible for identifying projects that will provide benefit to councils. And then we have advisory groups that actually run those projects. So give some examples here. We have an IT managers advisory group, a GIS activity group, and about 12 of those advisory groups that run our different projects, and they're obviously the subject matter experts in those particular areas of council business. An original catchphrase from our directors was that if Boplas is going to be involved, they'd like to see things being done better, faster, cheaper and easier. And we have really good examples of where we've achieved that in a number of different areas for council. Just a reminder that we're a very small organisation. I'm the only full-time employee of Boplas, and I have a couple of part-time staff that assist me. We've delivered over 45 initiatives to the councils, and those savings are over $18 million. So it's a very good return on investment for the councils. In the case of Tauranga City Council, for a very modest investment, there's been about $4.2 million worth of savings returned to the councils. And I've noted here that while we can measure the financial benefits, there's always a lot of other benefits that are returned as well. As an example, when we do procurement, if we do it on behalf of 9 councils, that avoids 9 councils having to run separate procurement programs and having to commit the resource to run those programs and the evaluation panels and so forth as well. And once the contracts are in place, it provides centralised contract management through Boplas instead of councils having to commit resource for managing their contracts as well. And often, because it being a larger group, we're able to achieve higher service levels that councils may not have been able to achieve had they gone to the market individually. And of course, there's also that benefit of sharing that knowledge and support and best practice across a group of councils as well. So looking at the last financial year, Boplas has had a very good year. We've delivered on all our financial and non-financial performance targets. In our annual report, you will have seen on pages 8 to 14 a very long and extensive list of projects that we're involved with. I just have picked out some of the highlights, and I realise that we've under some time constraints here, so I may not speak to all of them. But the first one is the aerial photography program that Boplas runs across all of our councils. There's obviously some real benefits in doing that collectively, as opposed to every council flying their own area individually. But one of the real benefits is that the aerial imagery goes into a shared database, and it's maintained once on behalf of all the councils instead of councils having to maintain and update that database. We went to tender in the last financial year for aerial photography. We obviously achieved significant savings by flying the region as one. But before the flying started, we adapted a unique approach to the capture and shaved another $100,000 off the contract, and that $100,000 gets returned directly as savings to the councils. Also last year we approached the Provincial Growth Fund around funding for our LiDAR capture, which is used for the 3D imagery, which is particularly helpful for flood mapping. As a result of that application to the Provincial Growth Fund, they are co-funding half of that program for us, up to $791,000. So once again, that's money that councils don't have to spend. That has been sourced through the Provincial Growth Fund. I've noted there a health and safety advisory group. They're probably one of our more effective groups over the last 12 months. They've run a lot of projects together. While there's been benefits in them, purchasing software and systems together, one of the real benefits is the fact that they share policies across the group. If one person develops a policy, it's shared within the group. We also work closely with the Waikato health and safety managers, and the same thing works across that area as well. So it's obviously a real saving for councils if one group is developing something together as opposed to all councils doing it individually. Robotic process automation is a project which is currently underway, started in the last financial year, and that provides an opportunity for automation of some of the more repetitive tasks that are done in the back end of council. And we have all of our councils enthusiastic to be engaged in that project. Prior to it going through Boplas, they were all beginning to develop their own programs. This provides an opportunity for a centre of excellence to develop a bot that's going to be suitable for all the councils to use, and effectively that bot could be cloned into different council environments. Procurement's a big part of our work streams, and I've just noted a couple of projects there that we're actually doing in conjunction, well actually on behalf of, with Waikato LAS, Manitou Wanganui Lass and Hawke's Bay Lass. So we've identified BOPLAS has some real expertise in procurement. So rather than all the lasses doing the same thing, they're becoming inter-regional initiatives. Insurance is probably our largest project, and I'd have to say it's our rockstar project as well, because it certainly delivers the most savings to the councils and a high level of benefits as well. But it's becoming more and more difficult every year with insurance for councils, and I thought it was appropriate probably to share a bit more information with this committee, because obviously risk is a big component of insurance. We spend a lot of time educating underwriters around how councils manage their assets. Also, by putting it through BOPLAS, we're able to demonstrate a geographical spread of assets, so that they're not so concerned about all those assets being in one concentrated area. But the markets themselves are becoming harder to sell into purely because of the level of claims on an international basis. And just to share some of those statistics with you, appreciate this is a fairly busy slide, but in the last year, 2018, there were $225 billion worth of economic cost through natural disaster events. But the interesting point is that 215 billion of those were from weather-related events. So it's been a real change from the way the markets are having to respond to what's known as frequency events, because obviously weather events are more regular than some of the other natural disasters. The cost to the insurers is $89 billion, and that's the fourth costliest year that insurance has faced. But what makes that statistic really interesting is that last year, the year prior, 2017, was the third costliest year that the insurance industry has ever had to face. So you've had 2 consecutive years being the third and the fourth costliest years that the insurance industry has had to face. And as a result of that, premiums increase, but of more concern, they often will not take on insurance that they were prepared to write before. Our councils have been able to renew the insurance through the BOPLAS program with a minimal increase compared with what a lot of other councils and industries are having to face. But more importantly, we're able to write it under the same terms as what our current insurance is under as well. If councils were operating individually, that would be impossible to do in today's climate. Just another interesting statistic, 2017 was the third costliest year in insurance history. The 10 years prior to that, all added up together, did not total what 2017 cost the insurers. So it's been a huge jump, and then particularly for that to happen 2 years in a row. I just want to touch on the collaboration portal. This was an initiative that our board of directors felt was important to develop. They're aware that quite often councils were developing projects in isolation to each other. And so we developed a portal where BOPLAS councils could put their projects that they were doing, thinking of doing, or may have already completed into the portal, and then other councils could say, look, we're thinking about doing the same thing, can we partner with that, or can we tap into the information that you've got to do with that project? It quickly became apparent that this shouldn't be limited to just the BOPLAS councils, and this has now become a national initiative. So we have councils from right throughout the country now sharing information into the collaboration portal. That conduit never existed before, and it's been developed, as I say, initially for BOPLAS councils, but it's still continued to be run by BOPLAS, but as a national program. The last thing I'll just comment on is our financial performance for the last year. We have a zero budget that we aim to achieve. Got very close to that in the last financial year with a $5,000 surplus, which was a good position to finish in. A small surplus is actually a good thing to have at the moment, just to put a bit more equity back into the company. And we have some tax credits from prior years that means that there's no tax implications as a result of that. So happy to take any questions.
Stephen, thank you. A really good overview for those that haven't been exposed to this before. Are there any questions from councillors? Councillor Cloud.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I just wanted to ask, to what extent are we cooperating with other councils on solid waste management, which you did reference in your report, given that we're doing this whole curbside collection review right now? And so to what extent are we working cross-council?
That's a really good question. We have a group referred to our activity groups before, and this one has the acronym SWAG, Solid Waste Activity Group, but it's quite nice being called SWAG. They have looked at several different areas for collaboration. There's several projects that are in the pipeline. The one that's just been initiated is the licensing of data of waste collectors. At the moment, every council has different rules around how they engage with those collectors. The collection agencies are working under different criteria. There's an obvious opportunity there to get some consistency. And the second phase of that is if there is a single licensing system put across those collection agencies across the greater region, then there's the opportunity for that entity to collect the data from the waste collectors that at the moment they often won't or feel they can't share with councils because of commercial sensitivity. So that's a key project which has just been undertaken, and that's going to cover the Waikato and the Bay of Plenty region. We've received a lot of attention from MFE around that particular project because they see that as being the possibility of a national initiative, and they're very pleased that it's being launched here in the Waikato and Bay of Plenty. So.
Thank you very much. Stephen, opportunities for growth for Botplace, particularly initiatives that are going to add value to the combined 9 councils?
Look, there's no shortage of opportunities. We're only limited by our resource. We're purposely kept as a fairly lean organisation, but there is a big, long list of potential opportunities that we can progress. So, yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Stephen, thank you. Thanks for coming in today. Really appreciate it. Moving on to the Tauranga Art Gallery Trust with Director Alice Hutchison and Chair Peter Anderson. Welcome, Alice and Peter. And Judith. Squeeze on in. Thank you, Andrew.
Well, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. Thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to speak to our report for the year ending 30 June. With me today is our Deputy Chair, Judith Stanaway. Judith is also, as being Deputy Chair, she's also Chair of our Risk, Finance and Administration Committee. Previously, Judith was a Senior Partner with BDO Accountants. She's also a director serving on a number of commercial boards and charitable organisations. She's also a fellow of the Institute of Directors and Accountants, and of course our director, Alice Hutchinson. I'll take it that my report is read. So just grab that one, thank you. Which way we go here? That one there? This one there. Oh, sorry. There. And I've got some slides here I just want to speak to. I've also got some handouts if you wish to have those for the elected members and also for the Chief Executive and staff like Gareth and Anne. They're available if you wish. This particular slide here, just again, particularly for the new elected members, is to understand that the art gallery is a little bit different than other CCOs in that the trust owns the art gallery site, owns the building, owns the assets. And of course it has full governance powers as defined within its trust deed and its constitution. And it's designed to deliver those things which are quoted there. The other important thing I think is that early in its establishment, and particularly when I joined the board, nearly 6 years ago now, we talked about the higher level values, which are actually very important to an artistic organisation, as it brings together other issues which are beyond just delivering exhibitions. And you'll see there where I've talked about the higher level values that we as a board agree that we need to subscribe to beyond the constitutional governance issues. And I make the point there that the art gallery is actually in the business of imagination enrichment. That's what we're on about. if we go now to some key issues, I think a lot of these are actually stated in the report, but I particularly want to talk and just highlight a couple of issues there. Our digital visitors, 122,000. We know that communities, and particularly our younger communities, are very, very strong on digital. And we've strategically moved through that and constantly measuring the changes between Facebook, which is now for old people like me, and then you go on to Facebook and all that sort of stuff. Instagram is where it's at. So constantly managing that. The other thing which I think is interesting is visitor satisfaction, which is 41% excellent and 40 very good. So 81% of people surveyed say, hey, this is a pretty cool place to visit. And how did you hear about us? Now, this is a very important one as far as the gallery is concerned, because 41% of our visitors come to us by walking past. And the next highest number, or next other number, is word of mouth. So 57% of people come to the art gallery based on the experience that they have when they come into the CBD. And the implications for us are that unless we can continue, and council can continue, to enhance the aspects of pleasurable enjoyment, to encourage people to come to the CBD, our visitor numbers will in fact continue to drop. Oops, what's happened there? Oh, there. Got it right there? Yep. Okay, oh, there we go. Yeah. So here's Alice. Many people have met Alice before, others haven't. The details, of course, are contained in the file, but as I mentioned in my report, Alice has an absolute stellar career internationally and is bringing a whole series of new initiatives which are really, really important to us. Oh, sorry. There we go. There we go. This is contained in our report, which is the purpose and aspirations of the gallery. The purpose of the gallery is to create exceptional art experiences that engage, inspire, challenge and educate. And our aspirations are mentioned in those other outlying areas which we've actually talked about. And again, when you think about an art gallery, we are an anchorage for art, which broadly expressed in Te Reo is as expressed there. And we're all about historical and contemporary art and honouring the past and the details which are stated in that particular slide. Mega World. Well, this was an amazing thing delivered by Alice, I have to say. And the example, all the facts are in the actual report that we've presented, but I think Mega World, as you'll see on this next slide, is that when Gary Baseman came down, this was quite exceptional. And you'll notice there that he took Toby, one of those little characters there throughout Tauranga and the Western Bay of Plenty, posted onto his website where he's got at least 170,000 visitors. And it's really interesting. Now, Baseman's international credibility was such that in addition to the 170,000 of his own people, we got coverage on TV New Zealand News, which is the country's obviously most popular TV channel, which has about 1.95 million views daily and an audience share of 43%. And then in the Herald Viva magazine, it reached 122,000 national readers. So we can proudly say that the gallery is certainly doing its best to promote the gallery in Tauranga. The Rydell Arts Prize. I'll ask Alice to speak to this briefly and then we'll move on.
Just briefly, the Rydell Arts Prize is a new national...
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
new national prize for painting, and we had 3 very illustrious judges: Auckland Art Gallery curator, Dunedin Public Art Gallery curator, and the City Gallery in Wellington, to convene in Tauranga to decide who the inaugural winner would be. And Christina Patayali is an artist based in Auckland. This will be our next exhibition. So to launch the $20,000 prize is quite a significant coup for Tauranga. The Rooms was a collaboration with the Elms, and we're very pleased to partner again, extending the partnership with the Elms with our current exhibition, Te Rangi Haupapa, and also with the Tauranga Heritage Collections in our current exhibition. At Matariki, this was really the first time we had an opportunity to work with 3 major Matariki exhibitions, not only in partnership with the Auckland Arts Festival and Te Uru, with the moving image artist Louise Potiki Bryant and Canadian First Nations artist Sante Smith. We also partnered with the TCC Libraries on a major exhibition, and showcased Louis Tamihana Gardner's Punamu carving, which was a major survey.
Okay, next one.
Good morning, councillors. I'm going to talk about the financial side. There's an overview on the slide there, and you have the full set of audited financial statements. As you've seen from the earlier slides, our non-financial measures have been trending extremely well, but success does come at a cost. The gallery over the last 3 or 4 years has really lifted the standard that it's providing, and that does provide us with some issues in terms of how to fund that. Council very kindly gives us about $1 million, very rough terms, $1 million. We have to raise about 500,000 ourselves to cover the balance, which we are probably at the limit of what we can ask the community, the Tauranga community, to provide for us. We usually come out with a surplus before depreciation, but by the time we include the depreciation allowance, we are always in a deficit, which means that from a cash point of view, we're fine, but from the point of view that when we want to upgrade our building and so on in long-term maintenance, then we're going to be struggling in the near future, and this is one of the issues that we're currently grappling with.
One of the key things that we've talked about is looking ahead, and those 3 points which we make here are at absolute top of mind as far as the board is concerned. One is asset protection, understanding the key drivers and influences, and the civic art project decisions are absolutely vital to us. They are absolutely vital to us. Because we cannot become a vital part of the fabric of the city unless these things actually happen. And as I've already mentioned, they will also influence our ability to maintain strong visitor numbers. And if we go to the next slide, please. We're just there. Very quickly, Alice, these 2 slides.
Just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Tauranga City Council for our incredible partnership on Mr. G. Thank you, particularly Gareth. This has been a truly successful event, and we are getting really huge visitor numbers in. It's been very widely publicised, a lot of editorial, and of course massive social media numbers. So thank you. And we will be running these shows over summer. We have a partnership too with the Regional Council to run the new electric buses with our contemporary artists doing custom designs for the new electric buses. At the same time, Terminus was a really major undertaking for the gallery. We had probably the largest visitor numbers in June and July, August, certainly in 5 years, due to the popularity and critical success. There's interest to tour it now, so I took part of the show to the Heidi Museum of Modern Art in Melbourne, which opened a few weeks ago, also to great acclaim. This is going to be now touring. There's a lot of interest to tour it throughout New Zealand, which will be an income generator for us, and we'll be able to capture those visitor numbers too. And then the major project for 2020 is to celebrate Mana Moana. So this will be very much, again, extending our partnerships, hopefully with the University of Waikato, looking at marine science, and really the whole theme is around, our Moana environment.
This is my last report to council. I've been on the board now for 7 years, 1 year as a trustee and the last 6 as chair. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. My term ends on the 1st of May. I just want to officially record my appreciation to past councillors and certainly council staff. We've had some difficult things to negotiate over time, but it's always been done with mutual respect and transparency. And I just want to thank you personally and on behalf of the board for your collective support of the Tauranga Art Gallery. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, Alice and Judith. And Peter, thank you for your service, sir, too, as chair. It was a great privilege for me to open Graham Hoteli's exhibition, and it is really spectacular. And I think the points that you've made is exemplified very much in that one exhibition of the fabric of art and culture, or more to the point, art and culture bringing the fabric of who we are in Tauranga Moana together. It really is quite spectacular. So thank you all very much for your report. Councillors, any questions of the team here? Councillor Cloud.
Yeah, I'll just echo those sentiments. Thank you very much, Peter, for your amazing service over many years, and thank you, Alice and Judith, as well for the art gallery is obviously going from strength to strength. I did have one question on the financials, and it's relating to the valuation of the artworks. The previous year, the artworks increased in value by 179,000, but this last year they were decreased by 333,000. So can we have some explanation on that, please?
It was an issue around GST, and that was the difference. It had not been recorded properly previously. So in this current valuation, it was excluding GST. But we can certainly send you any particulars from the valuation.
Oh, thank you. That would be great, because that wouldn't be the whole answer to that question probably, but thank you. That'll be helpful.
The point to recognise is that the art collection has not deteriorated or anything like that. It's more financial considerations. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. Are there any other questions, councillors? Very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming in, and wish you a great day, and look forward to talking soon. I'd like to welcome Kristen and Larissa from Tourism Bay of Plenty. And Peter, of course. How are you, Peter? Sorry, I beg your pardon. Welcome to you all.
Tēnā koutou katoa, I te mea o Tauranga, tēnā koe, I ngā rangatira o te rohi o Tauranga Moana, kia ora koutou. Ka nui te mihi ki a koutou, kua hui hui, mai nei, te atanei. Ko Kristen Dan toku ingoa ki te tumuaki o Tapoi Tamawa Nui Atoi. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Welcome back to our colleagues and welcome to our new colleagues. I am Kristen Dunn, the Chief Executive of Tourism Bay of Plenty, and I'm delighted to present our 2018-19 annual report to you. We will come together again on the 9th of December, and that will allow us time to talk about our strategy, our future and our vision. So for today, we just wanted to give you a short basis to that with a summary of our last year. For those of us who don't know us well yet, this is a brief snapshot. Our board consists of Larissa, who is not here today. This is Peter, and Gwen Keel and Jason Hill, and as you all know, we are currently recruiting for more board members. We're funded by 3 councils. We're a joint CCO of Tauranga City Council and Western Bay District Council, and we also have a memorandum of understanding with Whakatane District Council for international marketing. We have a relatively progressive funding source in terms of we have a targeted rate on commercial properties, as well as an alternative funding mechanism through Tauranga Airport. And we bring in other income from industry and other sources of about 24%. We also have a memorandum of understanding with Air New Zealand, which delivers outstanding in-kind value to the region, and I'll talk about that as part of this. We have 2 important strategic documents that guide us: the Visitor Economy Strategy 2018 to 2028, and this year that we're talking about now is the getting organised phase of that strategy. You will have all received a copy of Te Hata Poi, which is our next 3-year plan, and that's the laying the foundations phase of our 10-year strategy. Your previous colleagues were learned enough to increase our funding for this last year, and a good ratio to keep in mind is that organisations such as ourselves need about 0.21% of visitor spend in order to be fit for purpose. And our funding with Tauranga City Council moved from 0.13% to 0.19% in the last 12 months, enabling us to start to implement our strategy. Thank you very much. We have a wonderful team of highly talented people, and we have Angela, our finance manager, these results are really tribute to her, Esther, our partnerships manager, and also Stacey, our market research analyst, here with us today. This last year can be categorised as a year of significant change for our organisation, and the main changes that we have made is to become insights-led with everything that we do, and Stacey is no short part of that. We've taken a destination management focus as opposed to just a promotional focus, and part of that has been elevating Māori management principles for people in place into mainstream tourism management. We're taking a broader role in economic development, and that's including leadership, advocacy and coordination, and also visitor experience development and product development. We've put a real emphasis on partnerships, thank you to Esther, and they've allowed us greater collaboration and also momentum. We have a totally new and profound understanding of community engagement, and our practices have changed significantly. We've integrated our visitor marketing and visitor sales services models together, which again is quite unique in New Zealand. And we've shifted from a broadcast to an engagement marketing model, including content-rich storytelling focused mainly via digital channels. You will have seen in our annual report the highlights. It's always good in a finance and audit committee meeting, I think, to say that we've achieved our finance KPIs. And we also achieved 13 out of the 15 non-financial measures used to track our progress. Visitor spend did exceed both our targets and also the national average growth for the year. Those strategic relationships that I spoke to added $13.5 million in equivalent advertising value. We completed the recruitment of our new team to enable us to be destination managers. And Te Hata Poi, our destination management plan, is seen as both a national and an international exemplar. With community and stakeholder engagement, we really defined the DNA of this place and set a compelling vision, and we look forward to sharing both of those things with you on the 9th. We worked hard at the funding for Te Tomakanga, and that was announced as successful just following our financial year. In terms of our finances, we do aim to be a break-even organisation, and we slightly exceeded that with a profit this last year. Our total income of around $3 million was under what we budgeted, and that was due to a decrease in retail sales here in the CBD and also funding not received. We therefore managed our expenses in line with our income and to have the net result that you see before you. Our cash position was mentioned in the staff report. This does fluctuate throughout the year with income and expense fluctuations, but it does also reflect some contingency savings that we keep from a risk management perspective, and also savings towards capital projects such as the fit out of the eyesight on the Strand, which hopefully you've had a chance to check out, and also we have a website capital project underway. Our audit has been completed with Audit New Zealand, and we were delighted to make their life quite difficult, and they didn't. They could find no issues with us whatsoever, not even a missing receipt. So I really thank Angela and the team for their work in that regard. As I said, we achieved 13 out of the 15 key measures, and whilst we should probably focus on the ones we did achieve, I know that your questions will involve the ones we didn't. So we did not achieve the creation of a demand and supply model and calendar, and that was a choice to wait and see what central government might be able to provide in this regard. And also, our target for resident satisfaction was a little bit ambitious, and so we didn't achieve our target. Our result was in line with the year before, but it has sent us on a journey to really seek how communities wish for us to engage with them, and we'll be implementing plans around that to increase resident satisfaction with regard to the visitor economy. If I may just briefly touch on the current tourism landscape to give you a bit of a foundation for our discussion on the 9th. Tourism is notoriously difficult to measure. Things we can measure currently is visitor spend, resident perception, visitor perception, the number of jobs and also the contribution to GDP, cruise, and then our marketing efforts. We also measure internally our health and safety practices and also our employee engagement. The Tauranga resident satisfaction score actually comes from the Council's Community Perceptions Monitor, and it asks residents how likely they are to recommend Tauranga as a holiday destination to friends and whānau. So that plus 39 is a reasonable score, but certainly one we would like to increase. And we are very happy with our visitor sentiment index score, and it does put us ahead of our comparative group, which is the likes of Nelson, Northland and Noosa. In terms of visitor spend, this shows you the trend over time since 2016. We only began marketing the destination in earnest in 2014. And since that time, we've seen our visitor spend grow by 60%. So you can see here in this last reported year, growth was 5% up on the year before. That exceeded the total growth rate of 4% and the national growth rate of 3.2%. The domestic market grew by 4% ahead of the national growth rate of 2%, and internationally was 11%, which was over double the national growth rate of 5%. So whilst the country is starting to see a softening of the marketplace, this is largely driven by the Chinese market, and we're not affected by that here in Tauranga Moana, and we're still seeing significant growth from our international markets of Australia, the US and the UK. Of course, what you hear from us on the 9th is it's not so much growth that we should be concerned with, but the management of that. And we look forward to sharing with you our destination management plans in that regard. For Tauranga Territorial Authority specifically, at the reported time, visitor spend was $845 million. It's now $860 million. That has grown by 5.5% in the last year. And you can see there strong growth from international visitation as well as domestic as well. So Tauranga does enjoy the lion's share of the visitor economy. And I'm sure that you're not competitive at all with our sister cities, but by way of comparison, Rotorua's visitor spend is $828 million compared to Tauranga City's spend of $860 million. We're often asked what do visitors spend their money on, and you can see there that retail is the larger proportion of that, followed by food and beverage, both in terms of hospitality services and also other food and beverage such as supermarkets, and then accommodation services, other tourism products and transportation. Cruise is a highly visible part of our industry, but a relatively small part of the visitor revenue. We have roughly 114 ships again this season. That is a 30% increase from 2017-18, and you can see that the revenue from visitors off cruise ships increased by the same percentage point. Our focus, particularly in a growth-constrained city, is on the off-peak parts of the year. That's when businesses need us to deliver more people spending more money, And so we're really delighted to see the growth in our off-peak period, which is May to September, of 10% in the last year. And we're continuing to actively drive our campaign work into this off-peak period. I touched on the Air New Zealand partnership, which is a partnership over the next 10 years. In this last year, it has delivered outstanding value. In a pilot-constrained and plane-constrained environment, we've been able to add 80,000 more seats for Tauranga. That included 10 new one-way services between Tauranga Auckland and Tauranga Wellington routes. We work very proactively with Air New Zealand on making sure that that capacity is filled, and therefore we gain more capacity in the future. A good example of that is a recent JV with Wellington Airport, and that contributed to 27% increase in seats on that route in the period. We did host Chris Luxon here about 3 days before he resigned, and we'd like to say we had nothing to do with that resignation. We are hoping that in his new role within the National Party that he'll be even more influential for us. He was delighted with our strategy and very supportive of it. And we did have Ruben Levermore here just last week meeting with both Tembi and myself. Questions?
Kristen, thank you for that very succinct and yet thorough overview. Really very exciting to read these stats. Councillors, questions at all? Heidi.
Thank you, Kristen. Looking at your strategy, based on that, what do you think are the key opportunities for from council projects to realise that vision?
We would like to start that discussion as how we can move the DNA that we've uncovered and the vision to being a whole of city discussion. Placemaking can't be just about visitors, it's also of course about residents, and increasingly our role as placemakers needs to have discussion around how we can integrate that with the council teams and hopefully, well, really importantly, share that even if it needs to be tweaked.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, everybody. Kristen and Peter, we really appreciate you coming in today and look forward to catching up with you all on the, is it the 9th of December? Yeah, yes. Great, tremendous. Thanks so much. Much appreciated. Councillors, thank you for those questions. So I put the motion to you that we receive the council-controlled organisation reports for the period 2018-2019. I beg your pardon. Mohan, I didn't think you were going to be here today. I'm sorry, my apologies. Welcome. I'm going blind in my old age. Please accept my apologies. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, all. LGFA's had another good year, made 11.2 million profit. Thought I'll give a quick background to LGFA set up. Back in 2010, LGFA was thought of being set up, and basically the Crown came to support it this time around. There was a couple of attempts at it prior to that, and part of that, 9 councils got together, put some money in to get the feasibility study underway, and that's how it was conceived. And then 30 councils became shareholders, and we put 20 million in, and Crown gave 5 million. And a part of also that idea was to get a credit rating equivalent to the Crown. So the government agreed to put $1 billion committed facility, which is still there, for them to draw down then if they require. They don't draw down, just there as a facility. And that was sort of the start of it, and it's still there. And there's 30 councils, there's about 50 odd guarantors of the LGFA, and that's how it's progressing. Now, initially it was thought that it should save $25 million for the sector. Now we've achieved that. They've just gone on 10 billion borrowing, so 0.25% on 10 billion per annum. So very successful. They pay a dividend to us based on their borrowing cost plus 2%. So our share is 1.8 million. It's our capital, 2% on, plus their borrowing costs, which I think this year is about 4.62% is our dividend rate. And we initially, cost was about $4 million to set it up. We've recovered all of that, and they've got retained earnings of 44 million now, plus the 25 million. Initial funds put in by all the councils has been refunded now to all of us. So no further drawdowns. Any other questions?
Very good. Thank you very much for that, Mohan. Again, my apologies. Questions, Councillor Cloud.
Thank you, Mohan. So just for the benefit of relatively new elected members, just to clarify the exact benefit to us as a council of being involved with LGFA compared to doing borrowings ourselves is 0.25%. Is that correct? Or has that changed over the years, or is that likely to change over the years?
That's a rule of thumb, 0.25%. I think if we go out to the market on our own name, they'll always, the price will change depending on the term, but we think 0.25% is a pretty good indicator number. And only 2 councils now issue on the market on their own. It's Auckland. Auckland does their own thing. They're up to 8 billion debt now. And Dunedin. And Dunedin is looking at joining LGFA once we get the CCO structure in place, which they're doing at the moment with the LGFA at their board meeting earlier last week, and they approved that to go ahead with that only for 100% owned CCOs, not for multiple owned, or the Crown is the other option. So then all of the councils who are borrowing money across the board will be part of the team. So very.
And Mohan, this is purely a consequence of economic scale that you've got borrowings at that rate. Is that correct?
Correct, and also having the credit rating same as the Crown. So Crown is currently from Standard & Poor's is potential for an upgrade, but it's probably a 2-year outlook positive by S&P, not from the other Fitch or Moody's. So LGFA is also on positive watch. The lenders see LGFA as really close to the Crown, so therefore Australia is already AAA, and we're New Zealand's AA+. So depending on how the government do in the next 2 years, that's what they will upgrade it. So what that means to LGFA is that there's a lot of pension funds and funds globally, they only invest in AAAs. So those people can come into the more distribution across. Pricing might slightly improve, but that's what it's going to do. So we have to be, if we're not close, same as the Crown, thing doesn't work, basically.
Great, tremendous. Thank you very much for that overview. Councillors, any other questions? Thank you, Mohan. Very good report. And I'll try this again now, if I may. The motion is that the Finance Audit and Risk Committee receives the Council-controlled organisations annual reports for the period 2018-19. Can all those in favour? Second. Thank you. Kelvin, you have. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Against? Any abstentions? I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Just give us 2 minutes. We're just talking about the Treasury Strategy Report, which we do need to make a decision on. Just 2 secs, folks. With your permission, councillors, if we could bring, while Mohan's here particularly, if we could bring the Treasury Strategy slot forward, if that would work for everybody, that would be much appreciated.
Just introduce it and then hand over to Mohan. So Treasury Strategy comes to this committee every 6 months. Fundamentally underpins our long and short-term borrowing, any hedging that we put in place, and there's also just an update around some of the HIF funding that Mohan will go through, so I'll hand over.
Thank you, Mohan.
As Paul said, this is a 6-monthly report to align with the annual plan or the LTP that's being approved, and also with consistent with our Treasury policy, which is the Council-approved policy. I'll go through the different sections. Firstly, in terms of funding, our debt profile on page 326, it shows you our current debt profile as at end of October, and we have got, we had some maturities last week, 20 million, and now we've still got another 45 million maturing before June. That's the first by 1920. And since this report was done, we borrowed another $30 million, maturing April 30. And then the table underneath paragraph 7 shows the funding proposed in the next 6 months or so. And we're still forecasting around 540 net debt for 30 June. It's also depend on what the cash flows occur in the last couple of months of the year. We're requesting bank facilities. We currently have $70 million, which is undrawn, which sort of supports our credit rating and our maturity profile and limits under the Treasury policy. Previously, we had approved to go from 50 to 70 when the debt went over 400 million. Now it's just over 500. We're requesting further $30 million, get to 100 million, and the cost of it around 4 basis points in terms of interest rate terms, and the cost is shown on paragraph 16, another $60,000 approximately. In terms of the maturity limits, which is outlined in the Treasury policy, as a sort of framework sub-limits, we have to maintain so much debt within a 0 to 2 and 2 to 5 and 5+ years. So those bands are shown, and also target for June 20, 14% being 0 to 2, and 33 for 2 to 5, and 53 for 5 years plus. So, and also in addition to that, we also try keep our duration around about above 5, so trying to keep longer term. Pre-LGFA, we couldn't borrow long term unless you pay really high margins, so that's been the positive of LGFA. There's a section on LGFA which sort of covered already. It's part of the AGM last week. They were seeking all the shareholders to approve to lending to 100% owned CCOs or multiply owned CCOs, again, all councils, and exception being the Crown. At the moment, this does happen, for example, in Auckland. Auckland borrows and lends to Watercare that are 100% owned CCOs. So to avoid the sort of paperwork and make it streamlined and better monitor that risk in the Watercare, this will make it a lot more transparent by lending directly to them, because LGFA will monitor themselves separately as well. So that's the idea behind that. And also, earlier on, it was thought of these water entities will be set up by the government, and allow that sort of changes to the structure. So that was approved, just the execution of documents to be done probably in the new year sometime. And paragraph 35 shows the our covenants from LGFA perspective, and where we are and where we're forecasting to be by the year end. And just to note that, as I mentioned before, we borrowed $30 million in November. That was at for April 30 at 2.34 through LGFA. That's all up costs. We couldn't borrow that in the open wholesale market on our own. And there's a section on Housing Infrastructure Fund. Bit of background, it was part of the government set up the $1 billion fund to provide for new housing, and part of that program, council applied and approved 2 projects, and the third one's in progress, $157.7 million at zero interest, specifically for those 2 projects, Waiari water treatment plant and the Timanga wastewater. We've already drawn down about 10 million, and forecast to draw down quite a bit more by the end of June, close to around just under 50 million. So this was seeking approval to put it on hold on the basis that currently, zero interest rate they provide for that, it can't be socialised across all the council activities. So it's, at the moment, interest rates have come down quite a lot. Therefore, it's worthwhile for us to borrow through LGFA and everyone share the benefit. But however, recently that discussion with the MB, that they are looking at doing an amendment to the loan agreement to allow us to allocate against the general borrowing rather than specifically to the two projects. So if that happens, we're hoping it would. It's very significant in terms of interest cost to ratepayers. It'll reduce the interest bill. Yeah. So that's in progress. So we're hoping to hear from them in the near term. So at this stage, we won't draw down until we finalise that amendment to the agreement. And all our borrowings we secure through our trust deed, which is secured under rates. Across all the councils do this same structure, venture trust deed. And the paragraph 49 onwards, it's about, so when we borrow money, we split the funding risk from interest rate risk. This is the interest rate risk component. Again, we have bands in the policy to show how much is sitting maturing interest rate terms, years by time band. And table 51 shows you how much of our debt at the moment is fixed rate. So as progressively it goes down. So again, they have to fit in our time bands, which is on the paragraph 52. The graph shows where our fixed rate debt is in terms of the time bands. This also includes assumptions on the HIF when we did this. So if HIF doesn't occur, we need to borrow on a fixed rate basis or put hedging in place to match that. So intention is to stay in the middle of the bands rather than be back in pre-2008 where everyone was trying to stay high when the floating rates are up to 8%. So the long-term rates are lower. We've still got some of that old debt dropping off. We had one mature on Monday, $10 million issued a decade ago at 7.25%. So it was just repaid. If you do the same again today, it'll be less than 2.5. That's how high it got. That was the cheapest rate on that day back in 2009. This is after the GFC as well. The chart on paragraph 54 shows our debt and our average interest rate. At the moment, end of October is 4.07. It's come down 4.67 from 30 June 19, and we're forecasting it's just going to go a little bit below 3.87, thereabouts. We have got quite a few rates that's happening. Unfortunately, Reserve Bank didn't cut the rate as the market expected recently, but however, the pricing is there in the marketplace that by February, May, there'll be another rate cut. So we're aligned with the Australian market. So that's a bit of uncertainty. So we have got 150 million will reset at that rate, so which didn't happen a couple of weeks ago. And paragraph 55 shows our budget, current year's budget, 21.5 million for interest, and we're forecasting a bit less, 1.1 million in terms of reduction, which includes interest income as well as interest expense. That's a net figure, net 1.1 million. Again, that will flow through to rates, that number. And paragraph 56, which is just investments. We have investments right now. It's about $80 million. Again, quite a bit of it's to repay the debt maturing in January and 15th of April next year. So at times of rates time, which is February and August, those numbers go up and then slowly gets, as bills get paid and it gets drawn down. Foreign exchange, we don't really have much. We just got one contract at the moment. It's just, again, if somebody buying something offshore, like this one's related to water meters, time to time we get them, but not very often. So we generally anything over 100,000, we just hedge. We don't take any exposure risk with it. In terms of issuance margins, just We are very comparable with the World Bank, and from LGFA perspective, they borrow at the really very close, similar levels to World Bank or ADB. They're all guaranteed by various governments, so they get very good rates in terms of borrowing on the local or in the offshore markets. Only council who's allowed to borrow offshore is Auckland, got separate legislation. All the other councils, we're not allowed to. LGFA can. And also another thing government did when the LGFA set up was to make sure that LGFA doesn't pay tax. They amended the tax legislation to, otherwise the structure doesn't work. So amended the legislation to allow LGFA to be non-taxable entity. So what's passed through to us, same basis. Any questions?
Mohan, thank you again for that. That's really good. And great to see the, of course, we're within covenants. Are you comfortable going forward that within all the covenants that we've got so far, that with the growth plan, that we will be okay if we do these things properly and relying, I'm not talking about the really big ticket items that rely on central government, but the ones that we can control ourselves?
Yeah, we're comfortable, but as you would know, that the challenges do come with the capital program, significant capital program. We really can't breach 250. If we have to breach 250, we'll have to repay the debt, and then the cost will go up quite significantly. Other options are being considered, like the off-balance sheet vehicle structures are being considered at the moment. So somewhere down the line, it's needed. Those things are needed to.
All right, thank you. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Salisbury.
Yeah, I just have a question on point 29. You know where it talks about the LGFA can now lend directly to CCOs. Does that debt still sit on our balance sheet?
Apologies. Thank you. And Councillor Robson.
Sort of question to the chair, really, and it comes from paragraph 40 and comment with regard to internal borrowing. There's been some discussion for a while now about the role of internal borrowing and its use by councils, and I'm just wondering whether, I imagine not too many people are familiar with it, what the implications are, or perhaps what those discussions are. The Office of the Auditor General has been looking at this for a little while now, and there's been some comment that, you know, if the discussion outside council chambers starts to sort of increase in volume, it may be something they'd like to look at more closely. I'm just wondering whether there's an opportunity to workshop just how we fund what we do at some point, so the people sitting on this committee get some familiarity around it. It's not urgent, but I'm conscious that it's one of those areas that's actually quite significant for us. And I just noticed internal borrowing mentioned under paragraph 40, so it seemed an opportune time to raise it.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. I'll ask Paul to answer this, but are you specifically referring to the HIF at 0%? Is that fundamentally the question?
No. Part of the HIF discussion was the impact on our internal borrowing calculations. So it's not about HIF, it's about the fact that we do internal borrowing, what the implications that are, how that's managed. And as I say, the Office of the Auditor General has been looking at this for a little while. There is some discussion out there in the wider world about how this works and what the implications are, how closely it's monitored by governance. And I just wondered whether there's scope at some point in our induction to get across that. It is a significant source of funding for councils generally, and we do use it.
Thank you. Paul.
So through the chair, absolutely we can do that, and what I would suggest, it's probably relevant in context of a revenue and financing policy conversation, because that's actually the how it actually all fits together in terms of and facilitates that policy to work. So yes.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions, councillors? Councillor Arbery, and then Councillor.
So are you looking for a decision around the HIF not drawing down until a decision by MB?
Correct.
Through the chair, if I could just add to that, there's not a extensive amount of planned borrowing until next calendar year, so we've got a little bit of time to work that through. But we don't want to go forward with HIF borrowing unless we've got a change in the loan agreement. Otherwise, it is technically a cost to ratepayer.
Thank you, Councillor.
So that was
Horlock.
one of my questions, that you still want F passed as this resolution in here, that we do what's recommended there in F, right? We're still doing that. My other question was, you mentioned about the 7% fixed rate coming off, you know, and this is what the first of those high interest rates. So we should be looking at a period now through the next 10 years where we're seeing all those loans with whatever term they were coming down off higher rates and onto these lower rates we've got. It would be interesting sometime to see, you know, that explained for us laymen, just what that's going to translate to in terms of our costs going forward.
For example, for October, this is only for 10 million that matured. We've got 550. So, and this for the 407 for October, 0.07, it drops to 4.02. That's dropping off. So it just slowly goes down. It doesn't. It will go down if we draw down, say, 50 million for HIF, and by June, and at zero, that will come down even below the what we haven't got any HIF zeros in here, 3.87. So it'll come down significantly. So it does come down slowly. Yeah, we've got hedging in place too. That sort of drops off. That's the profile of that table on page. Paragraph 51. That's our fixed rate. That's how it drops off slowly. Some new ones which haven't started, some old ones mature off at a lower rate, so grinds down. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bullock, and thank you, Maha. We are in I guess, an enviable position in a low interest environment with projections going down from there, so it isn't a bad position to be in given the growth that we are about to go through at some stage. So, Mahan, thank you very much for your I beg your pardon.
Sorry, one very quick
Councillor
question. Paragraph 45, and this may be something that Christine might be able to answer. Can you just explain further the impact that NZTA is saying in terms of us, you know, if we weren't using the HIF funding, that they would, we'd have to reapply? Can you just explain that, please?
So the NZTA, so we've been working with NZTA in terms of the NZTA contribution to particularly the Papamoa East Interchange. That is, the position of NZTA is that is to be funded from the overall HIF pools. There's $1 billion in the HIF pool, and there's allocated to each of the projects, and it's coming out of the Tutumu slice. If we don't progress the HIF, then we would then try to have to get that out of the National Land Transport Fund, which is a different pot of money, and there isn't enough money in that pot. And so those are all being prioritised, and so rather than having effectively, if you like, a slipstreamed way through via the HIF to NZTA funding share, we would then have to get into the ranked national prioritisation process as part of the NLTF, and we may or may not be successful.
Just the difference being that the HIF is a loan, whereas if it was through the national allocation, it would be a grant. Is that right?
No. So within the HIF, it's a subsidy, but the subsidy, the NZTA gets the funding for the subsidy from the HIF not from the NLTF. So from a TCC point of view, it's still a subsidy, but we have, once the HIF's agreed, we've got a guarantee of it, if you like, as best we can, whereas alternatively we need to compete via the NLTF prioritisation process. Helps?
Thank you very much. Councillor Robson.
I think there's a follow-up to that, because what happens then? What's the change? Is there any impact on us in any way about that change? If there's an issue with getting it from the NLTF, what happens?
Well, it will be the same as those other projects where we came to you a few months before the election to say we haven't got this funding confirmed. Then the council needs to make a decision on, do you stop, defer or proceed, and proceed with ratepayer funding or alternative funding rather than NZTA funding subsidy. So what we're trying to do at the moment is get the terms of the contract changes, as Paul has spoken about, and get the HIF finalised together with the proportional share that NZTA agrees should be funded by NZTA, because we won't be able to draw down from the HIF in terms of Te Tumu until we've got certainty of getting through into Te Tumu. We've talked to you previously about the issues of getting through there, but at least by getting the agreement in place and signed off, we've got a starting point position where we've got acknowledgement of what NZTA's contribution should be. If we end up not picking up on HIF in the long term, then we can start to have a conversation with the Crown about urban development, the need for housing, and are there other avenues of funding? If HIF's not available, that mean we don't need to go through the NLTF prioritisation process.
Christine, thank you. If I can have a crack at summarising this, and please jump in if I get it wrong, but this is all around sequencing of cash flows or sequencing of funding. And if we fail on HIF in some regards, we've got a fallback position, and we've
get some of the stuff agreed, then those fallback positions, we've got a starting point rather than having to debate the dollar contribution. We're debating where the money comes from, and we're trying to sort that first step out.
Councillor Arbery. Thank you, John, for that question.
Yeah, just the last one. So if MB choose to decline, will you then come back for us to make a decision on which source of funding we go with?
We rely on LGFA for funding.
Through the chair, the resolution is worded in a way that we would only use the HIF funding in the event that we can get an amendment to the loan agreement. Otherwise, we would be through our normal funding mechanisms, which would be LGFA.
We're talking about two things here. So the Tamanga and Waiari are already under construction and are being drawn down, and they'll be drawn down from the HIF. The conversation we were just having was around Te Tumu, which we are currently not drawing down because that hasn't progressed. So the Tamanga and the Waiari HIF agreements are complete and signed. The Te Tumu is not yet complete and signed. So they're in different points of the progress, if that makes sense. So we would come back on Te Tumu and have, if we can't get that sorted, and talk to you about how you wish to progress before we spend the money on Te Tumu.
Happy to move, Mr. Chairman, if you're ready for that.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, I am. Thank you, Councillor Border. Can I have a seconder for receiving that report? Councillor Salisbury, thank you very much. We have 6 recommendations that you would have read. I'm very happy to read those out for you, or can I take them as read? Take them as read. Thank you very much for that. I'll put the motion that we do accept then parts A through F separately. All those in favour say aye. Against? Any abstentions? So that's unanimous. Thank you. So we don't need a show of hands. I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, I wonder if we can just break. We've run up against a time constraint. As you know, we have Minister Twyford here this afternoon and a couple of other things to do. So I wonder if I could beg your indulgence and if we could jump to the Mauau meeting. Is that possible? Which means closing this meeting and adjourning this meeting, I beg your pardon, and opening the emergency meeting under section 22 alpha. Do I have your permission to do that? Right, thank you. So I declare this meeting closed. Adjourned, I beg your pardon. And just give us, should we have a stretch? Stand up and have a stretch, and I think that would be a good thing to do.